How can you turn a trip into a genealogy adventure? I'm sharing my story from a recent holiday where Mark and I chat about my successes, my regrets, and all the tips I picked up along the way. If you're looking to mix travel with family history, this is the video for you.
So, Rob, you recently went on a family holiday to the UK. And while you were there, I know that what the purpose wasn't, genealogy, but I know that you did some research and I've just got a few questions I wouldn't mind asking you about how you prepared for that and what happened when you arrived in England.
Yep.
So, just what preparation did you undertake prior to the trip?
What I did was jot down as much information or save it onto my phone as I could, which I could draw on at the time while I was in country.
Hmm.
This was taking out of my family tree from my computer, which I knew I wouldn't have access to for the duration of my visit because I
Hmm.
didn't have a laptop with me, which I could put it all on. And I had to lower my expectations on what I could achieve because I was going with the kids and they would get very bored if I just went visiting graves and record offices and things all the time. So I thought I'll hit some of the priority things, which I
Yeah,
can't
not
do
what you want to
from
do with
here.
teenagers. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But what I did was get details of things like graves, so where some of my ancestors were buried, so which cemetery and which section and which plot they were in, and have that info.
Hmm.
Churches which they've been married in or christened in, that sort of thing. And I also had actually I use Legacy Family Tree as my main tree, which is offline. So what I did was export a GEDCOM file and then upload that into Ancestry, where I also have a tree, but I created a new tree in Ancestry and just uploaded that GEDCOM. So I'd have everything. So then if I had something come up or an idea which I hadn't thought of before leaving Australia, then I could still access it, even if it was a bit cumbersome to do so on my phone, but at least I knew all the info was there. And I did end up using that quite a bit when I was in England. I also had a list of ancestral houses, so where some of my
Oh, the
great great
addresses of
grandparents
where the
were deceased.
relatives lived. Yeah.
The addresses, yeah, yeah. And obviously I'd got those from censuses and baptism records and things like that. But I listed them all, and I also before I left, I created a Google map which had some points on it for different houses, particularly around Liverpool. So a lot of what I did on this front was around Liverpool, where a lot of my family is from.
Hmm.
If I had had more time, I would have gone to other regions like Norfolk, for example, but it wasn't going to be anywhere near where I was going, so I had to leave that
So
for
you
another
really
day.
fit
There'd be lots more
genealogy
I'd like to.
around the itinerary that you already had for your holiday. You didn't make specific
Yeah, exactly.
plans.
Yep,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
Which is good. I think most people would do.
Yeah. Like, it'd be fine if I was going unaccompanied or with people with equal enthusiasm for genealogical matters as me, but in reality, that wasn't the case. So I just fitted this around my other activities and sightseeing and everything like that.
Hmm. And what actual physical documentation did you take, if any?
I didn't take any physical documents with me. I probably could have, but I knew that I had like the details of the documents in the tree anyway. Because when I get a birth certificate or something like that, then I'll transcribe a lot of the details into the notes section of my tree. So then I knew that I'd have it on hand
And you
because I'd
accessed that
uploaded
through
it
your
to
phone. You
Ancestry.
didn't take a laptop with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, and I did draw on that quite a bit. So I didn't need to have any physical documents, though I do have lots of scans and saved images and things in my OneDrive as well, which I can access from my phone or from any computer once I sign into OneDrive. So theoretically, yes, I definitely could have accessed any birth certificates or census images or anything like that remotely because of OneDrive. But this is not an ad for Microsoft, but I happen to use OneDrive. But I didn't need to because of the transcription I've done, and you relied on that instead.
And for those of us that are technologically challenged, you could just make a list of addresses in Liverpool, couldn't you? You don't have to have all this
Yeah.
transferring information and data
Oh
onto
no, that's right. You could if you had
electronic
the info.
family
That's what I
trees
ended
and
up
then
with.
onto the phone. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. that was more about a way to have all the info there. So in case there's anything I thought of that I hadn't planned for
Yes.
before leaving Australia, then I'd have access
Yeah.
to it. But I actually, what I ended up doing was having a notepad and then writing. So for Kirkdale Cemetery, which is in the north of Liverpool, there's a lot of my ancestors buried there. So then I would write down those grave details for that cemetery. So I was actually working off paper in the end because it is easy if you've got things on a bit of paper. So I had
Particularly on a
everything electronic,
holiday.
but
Yeah.
then I
Yep. Hmm.
yeah, exactly. And the same with the houses. Then I end up writing down a list of houses by area or by street and then following that rather than trying to do it on my phone because be quite fiddly to try and look at the list and then make sure I've ticked them all off on a phone. That would be definitely possible, but easier on paper.
Hmm. And you mentioned you were over there primarily to visit family. Did you interview people when
Mhm.
you're there, or discuss or ask questions of people, or
Yeah,
how did you do?
I
Did you
used to
do
have
that in a formal sense, or just very casually?
nothing formal. It was all casual. And so I just have discussions with cousins. So my dad's first cousins over there,
Hmm.
and they would tell me about different people in the family, and then I would note things down. Though I could have been better prepared on that front because if I'd been a bit more like an investigator or detective,
Mm.
I would have had a notepad and pen and been jotting stuff down as I went. But I didn't do that. And so then I was a bit reliant on my memory of what was told to me and about such and such an auntie or something. And then I'll try to remember that detail and then put it down in my notes and in my phone afterwards. So uh,
Lesson
my
learned.
recommendation to anybody else would,
Yeah.
yeah, lesson learned. Just have a little pad and paper and pen, sorry, uh, to jot things like that down because my memory is certainly not perfect. So there'd be a lot of things that I was told that I just forgot afterwards. So it would have been better to have a pad and pen.
And where did you visit when you were over there? Where you visited, or what, 4 or 5 locations for houses, 1 or 2 cemeteries? How much did you fit into what sort of time frame?
Well, so the visit took me to London and Liverpool and Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire. The family, I saw cousins in those like
All
in
those
Nottinghamshire,
places. Hmm.
but there weren't any sort of graves or anything or houses I went to there except for the living relatives. I went to
Yep.
some of their houses, but it was more around Liverpool. So because that's where a large concentration of my family is from on my dad's side at least, and on his mother and father both were either born or live there.
Hmm.
So it was mainly around there and in sort of northern Liverpool, around Walton, and so Kirkdale Cemetery, and there was also Anfield Cemetery, which I didn't get to. I wanted to, and if I hadn't been with the kids, I would have gone to Anfield Cemetery, but there was only one or two there. So, but I knew there was a lot in Kirkdale Cemetery and a lot of houses on that northern side of Liverpool as well, so around Walton. So I went off myself one morning and just knocked off all this Kirkdale Cemetery work. I just went to the
Yep.
cemetery, and a lot of the cemeteries like that will have a map at the front. So all I had was a section, the name of the person and maybe details from their grave, but then the section number and then the plot number. Um, and then I would took a photo of the map. So I'd have it on my phone to refer to make sure I was in the right spot once I, went off into the cemetery.
Yep.
And so then I get myself in the right spot, but the graves themselves weren't numbered. So it was then they're not massive areas, but if you got like, I don't know, 100 square meters of grave or more, it's quite hard to narrow it down to where the grave might actually be without knowledge of how they set them up. Where's one?
Yep.
Is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Where does that start? So what I found really useful for this was each grave would be on the Find a Grave website, and there are often photos taken of the graves, which I had often, well, actually requested beforehand. Because if you know where the grave is, you can create the grave on Find a Grave, and then you can put a request out for someone to take a photo of the grave, someone who's local.
Oh,
So you
okay.
might be like in Australia in my case, but the grave is in England. So then somebody in the Liverpool area in this case would go to Kirkdale Cemetery and take a photo. So then I was able to look at the grave photos on my phone to work out where the grave was, and there was one that was quite tall and
Ornate.
fancy, and that one was kind of easy to spot. I looked at that, and then I sort of scanned around and thought, oh, there it is. And so I went over to it, and sure enough, I looked at it, and it was the one I was after. But then there were others which had been knocked down, so they're actually lying flat on the ground. So then I had to work out from the shape in the photo and look at ones that had been knocked over, and then find one of the same shape to narrow that down. But because this was a bit earlier in the year when it was very frosty, because it was first thing, there was still the frost hadn't melted yet. I couldn't read the graves that were lying flat on the ground. So then I had a bottle of water. So then I had to tip water onto the headstone to just melt some of that frost to reveal the lettering underneath. So if I had realized that was going to be a factor, I would have brought a lot more water with me, because I ended up using all the water I had.
Or go
But
later in
thankfully, I
the
managed to
day. Yep. Mhm.
melt them enough.
Yep. I was just wondering,
Mhm.
where did you find the number and the plot of the grave? Where did that come from again? You had that when
That
you
would have been
arrived at
in
the
the
cemetery, or you found it at the cemetery?
yeah. No, I already had that from the would have been from the burial records of that person. So when either be the death for whichever individual it was, it would have been like the death record, and then if there was a burial record, like a burial register for the cemetery, and that would have the section and the plot number for that person.
And you were finding that in Ancestry, MyHeritage, where you were finding that?
Ancestry is where I would have gone through for most of those, I
Mhm.
think, yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah, and so
interesting.
when
Yeah.
I didn't do that, it wasn't so much in preparation for the visit that I did that, because I had that info anyway, because I'd found it previously when I've been researching that person. I'd jot down those details and then put them into Find a Grave. So I had the info in two spots.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great.
and you can also create virtual cemeteries on Find a Grave, where you can sort of cluster. If I've got one, virtual cemetery for my grandpa's relatives and my grandma's relatives and all that, and that helped me narrow down any graves which are likely to be in that area as well.
Uh-huh.
Or I could have created one for Kirkdale Cemetery too, if I wanted to. So that was really good. So it was sort of work I'd done a while back, noting that detail, then kind of paid dividends once I was in country and in a position to do something about it.
Yeah, so
And
it is worth putting that time into the research originally, so that when you arrive on
yeah,
site, wherever it is in the world,
hmm
you're not wasting time trying to,
yeah,
particularly if there's nobody available to help you at the time of day that you arrive,
mm,
particularly at the cemetery, rather than just, a shot of a house in a suburban street. So,
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
mhm.
One
So,
good thing about there was once I found a couple of graves, I had others on my list, but I found that I got to one grave, and then I just looked at the surrounding graves, and I realized that a number I was going to be looking for were already like right next to or behind those ones. So the families seemed to buy plots near each other, which
that's
made my
interesting.
work of searching for them a lot easier. It was find one, and then it really narrows down your search area, especially for those which are weathered or they're covered in frost or something. And if you
Hmm.
really want to know where to look around the graves that you've already identified.
Okay.
And it's what I
And
actually often do when putting in a request for find a grave photos. I also often ask if they can take a photo of the grave in one of the surrounding areas, so you can get a bit of a picture of that, and also just to check if there are any other graves of that same surname sort of adjacent to it, just
mhm.
in case they've been buried near each other.
And can I just ask what advice you'd give to viewers who think what worked and what didn't? What you would do differently next time?
Yeah, I think the more you can have on paper, the better. Like, it's really good to have electronic records of things, as I said, but it's much easier to work on paper. Even if you have a laptop, like you don't want to be sitting in a cemetery with a laptop perched on your knee or something. It's much better to have a paper record.
Mm,
So I'd definitely do that. And I think I sort of ran out of time to prepare everything that I wanted to, but it's worth anticipating that things are going to take longer to prepare than you expect. So if you know you're going away in 6 months, don't leave your preparation for 3 weeks before you go, because chances are you'll run out of time.
Yep.
So start your preparation as soon as you know you're going to go. Start the preparation then as much as you can. Because I could have, yeah, definitely could have been better prepared. I knew that I wasn't going to be 100% prepared, but I thought I'd hope for the best.
When you say
But
prepared, what did you miss out on that you thought you were going to find?
I think there would have been some other graves and other houses that I could have visited if I'd prepared the list a bit better than I did. Like, I think I did pretty well, but there were some that I could have gone to if I'd had the time to note them all down before going. Like for Anfield Cemetery, for example, I know I've got more than a couple of relatives buried there, but I could only find a couple. So it was a little bit of a missed opportunity, but I'll be back
Yep.
in Liverpool at some stage. Questions, if any specific questions for people. If I was super prepared, I would have listed questions on different individual, like my great grandparents and their siblings and that sort of thing, which living relatives might have been able to answer. But as it was, I was sort of limited to what I could think of to ask at the time or what they told me. But there may have been specific things which I
Yeah.
could
And
have
did you ask them
had
for
addressed,
copies of
which I did.
photographs or?
Not really, though. Actually, what I do have on my phone is an app called Photo Scan. I think it is. It's a Google app, and that enables me to scan photos that people have without needing to take a copy or anything, and just by using my phone. And that's even if they're in a frame. So one of my cousins did when we had a bit of a family gathering in Nottinghamshire. One of my dad's first cousin brought a load of photos, so I would be using that to scan them.
Hmm.
So then now I've got a scanned copy of that photo, which is still in England, but I've got a scanned copy on my phone, which I could then transfer to the computer. That was really useful. So I'd definitely if recommend something like that, because you can't always access a scanner or get them out of frames or anything like that.
Yeah.
And
And you only want a copy. You
uh,
can't take somebody else's photographs with you. So, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when you take a photo, if something's in a frame, if you take a photo of it, it's just a normal photo. It's better than nothing, but it's not going to look great. But with this app, and I'm sure that others like it, you can really scan across the photo and remove glare and flashes and that sort of thing. So
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
good to know.
really
It's a good tip. Yeah.
really effective. Yeah. There was even one above like a picture of one of my great uncles in a frame above a doorway. So I was able to use that and just lift up my phone without taking the photo off the wall. But I'm just
Hmm.
by using my phone, I was able to scan that way, and I've got a nice copy of that for myself without needing to touch the original at all.
So that is a handy hint. So, yeah, I'll definitely do the same when I'm traveling. So, anything else that came from the visit or?
There was a church in Birkenhead, which is on the Wirral across the Mersey from Liverpool, that I wanted to go to because I had some family baptisms in
Yep.
there, but I didn't realize it wasn't open all the time, and I wasn't there during the opening hour. So I think I was able to stand outside and take a
Again, more
photo of it and sort
preparation
of
in advance. Yeah.
preparation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to look at if you want to go to a church, look at when the opening hours are and what because they might only be open certain days of the week between certain hours. So you,
Yep.
you can't
Hmm.
just expect to rock up and be able to go in. It wasn't the end of the world, and I figure I can go back again sometime. But it was
If it
slightly
was a one
disappointing
and
not to
only
go in
trip,
there.
it would have been disappointing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There was another thing I was really happy with was one of my was he great grandfather's. He ran a pub in Liverpool in Walton from at least the 1881 census up until the 19 well, beyond the 1901 census. I think he might have died in 1909, and the pub's still there. So I was able to go in and see that pub that he ran and lived in upstairs, because the census records had the dwelling or the residence as
Yep.
being that pub, and there were lodgings upstairs. So because I had all that info from the census, I was able to go in and then talk to the people in there, and then I introduced myself and said who I was, and then I was given like really nice treatment by by the people running the place as well, and
Oh,
end
that's
up go. I
lovely.
just wanted to go in and have a look and maybe have a beer in there, but then
Yeah.
the woman working behind the bar took me downstairs into the cellars and showed me this old sign from the pub that probably post his time, but still it was something from the history of the pub. And then I ended up spending, I don't know, 3 hours in there or something talking to people. Like, I never met anyone there, but I just went in and she was telling everyone, "Oh, this his one of his ancestors used to run this pub for a long time," and so I made all these, new friends for the evening at least, and it just made it a really
Oh,
yeah,
that's
really lovely
lovely.
experience, and I was glad I did
Yeah.
it. I was sort of,
Yeah.
worried about them, go in and then, they don't care or something like that, and but yeah, it was really nice, but it helped that Liverpool's a friendly place like that as well, but it was good, and I was even when I told them I was an Everton fan and they were Liverpool fans and that, they'd have a dig at me, but
Yeah.
it was all very nice, and they took me to speak to one older man who'd been going there for a long time, and we yeah, sort of told him about it, and then he asked what the name of the family was, and I said, "Oh, it was Swift." And then he said, "Oh, yeah, when I was a kid, it was referred to as Swifts." So it was really like the
Oh,
pub is
oh,
now called the Breeze Pub because it's on
yeah.
Breeze Lane in Liverpool, but yeah, he knew it as Swift. So I don't know if it changed. I haven't actually got to the bottom whether it was officially called Swift back then, or it was just referred to as that because the Swift family ran it for decades. But that was really good because that was someone living now who had a memory of the name of the family who ran it, at least back in the early 1900s. And I'm not sure how far beyond that because one of his sons, not one of my ancestors, but one of the siblings, did take on management of the pub for a while. So that name had continued beyond, the 1909 death of my direct ancestor. But it was really nice though to have someone who living now who still had living memory of the pub being referred to by one of my ancestral names.
It's great because when
Yeah.
you're on holiday, you don't necessarily want to spend all your time in cemeteries, nor do you want to spend all your time in libraries looking for records or, local
Mm,
historical societies. It's great that, a pub or a factory or somewhere where somebody worked or a farm, you can
mm,
include that in your itinerary. And it just adds, as you said, you had a really great evening chatting to people and it was combining your holiday and genealogy. So,
mm. Yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't have been in that pub at all if it wasn't for genealogy. I would have had no clue. I knew that there was a pub in the family. I've got a painting up in the house I got from my uncle, and they think it came from a family pub, which I think
mhm.
is likely to be that pub I went to. So it's possible I've got sitting in Australia, I've got a painting on the wall of that pub I went to in England. So it makes it much more meaningful. And if I hadn't been into the genealogical research, I would have had no idea except that yes, okay, there was a pub in the family somewhere, and this painting was probably from there.
Yeah, but this brought it all to life.
But
So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was really good, and I'll if I go back to England again and to Liverpool again, as I always do, I'll definitely try and go to that pub for another beer and see if those people are still there. Yeah, it was really nice.
oh, excellent,
Yeah,
excellent.
other
Mhm,
thing I
go
did
on.
in Liverpool, which wasn't directly genealogically related, but it's to do with my family history, was Everton Football Club is in Liverpool, and I'm as far as I know, I'm the fourth generation Everton fan in the family because my dad is, my grandpa was, and his grandpa, who was from, oh, sorry, his father, they were from Northern Ireland, but they migrated to Birkenhead on the Wirral, and we're Everton fans. So as far as I know, my great grandfather went to Goodison Park, which is where Everton played until very recently. So when I was able to take my kids there, it meant that they were the fifth generation to go to that ground. And that's what actually prompted the whole trip in the first place, because Everton were moving to a new stadium for the upcoming season. They were leaving Goodison Park, so it was the last time we could go back to Goodison Park, and this time take my kids along. So it was sort of it was a now
Continue a
or
family
never
tradition. Yeah.
opportunity. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you can say all those generations of my family have been to that ground, to that, watch Everton players run around on the same patch of grass, even if the stands change over time. But The ground itself was there from 1892, so it more than covered all of those yeah generations of my family.
Excellent, excellent. Oh, well, thanks, Rob. Really appreciate it. And there's some great hints and tips there for future trips. Whenever you're traveling around the world, you can always include genealogy as part of it, and yeah, add some life to
Mm.
documents. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely, mate. It was really rewarding. So yeah, definitely recommend it
Fantastic.
for anyone who's going on a holiday. If they can weave in some genealogical elements of it, even if it's not the main focus of the holiday,
Hmm.
it yeah, it can be very rewarding, especially when you come back and look at the photos and think what all that those nice things you did, thousands of miles away in this case.
Great. Thank you. Next time.
Cool. Thanks, Mark.